The Girl Who Feared the Mirror, 1:30. Hook. She was the kind of beautiful that made people stop and stare. The kind that made mothers whisper to their daughters about grace and poise. But in the small town of Millbrook Valley, everyone knew one strange thing about Anna Whitlock. She never, ever looked at her reflection. Not in windows, not in water, not even in the polished surface of a spoon. For years, people thought it was vanity in reverse, some kind of humble modesty. But they were wrong, dead wrong. Because on a warm September evening in 2004, when a visiting cousin accidentally hung a mirror in Anna's bedroom as a surprise, the scream that tore through that farmhouse didn't sound human. And what Anna confessed in that moment, sobbing on her knees with her hands covering her face, would unravel a 20-year-old nightmare that had been hiding in plain sight. This isn't a story about superstition. This is about survival. And the day that mirror was placed in front of her, the truth finally came for them all. Title card. The Girl Who Feared the Mirror. 1:33:00. T's key questions. What would make a young woman so terrified of her own face that she'd rather live in darkness than risk catching a glimpse? What kind of secret runs so deep that an entire village protects it without even knowing they are? And why did Sheriff Dale McCarthy, a man who'd seen 30 years of crime in rural America, call this case the most disturbing he'd ever worked? 3 questions haunted this investigation from the very beginning. First, what did Anna Whitlock actually see in that mirror? Second, why had her mother spent 2 decades teaching her daughter that reflections were dangerous? And third, what really happened on the night 16-year-old Anna vanished from her home, only to reappear 2 decades later as a ghost the town thought they'd buried? Stay close, because this story doesn't just twist. It shatters everything you think you understand about memory, guilt, and the lies we tell to protect the people we love. 3:10:00. Backstory and character setup. Anna Marie Whitlock was born on a cold February morning in 1,988 inches Millbrook Valley, a town so small you could walk from one end to the other in under 20 minutes. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, your family, and your business. Her father, Robert, worked at the grain mill. Her mother, Margaret, kept house and grew vegetables that won ribbons at the county fair every summer. By all accounts, Anna was an easy child, quiet, obedient, curious in the way little girls are when the world still feels safe. But somewhere around Anna's 6th birthday, something shifted. Margaret Whitlock, a woman who'd once been chatty and social, became reclusive. She stopped attending church, stopped hosting dinners, and she did something that puzzled the neighbors for years. She removed every mirror from their home, not just the big ones, every single reflective surface. She covered the bathroom mirror with fabric. She replaced shiny faucets with matte finishes. She even painted over the glass on picture frames. When asked why, Margaret would smile tightly and say it was a spiritual practice, that vanity was a sin, that God wanted them to focus inward, not outward. People thought it was odd, sure, but Margaret had always been a little eccentric, so they let it go. But Anna grew up in that house. A house where she never once saw her own face clearly. Neighbors remember her as a sweet, almost painfully shy girl. She excelled in school, especially in art. Her drawings were hauntingly detailed, mostly landscapes and animals, never people. Teachers noted she had a habit of looking down when she spoke, of angling her body away from windows. One teacher, Mrs. Callahan, recalled asking Anna to look in a compact mirror during a school play rehearsal to check her costume makeup. Anna had refused so violently, tears streaming down her face, that they'd let her skip the play entirely. People chalked it up to anxiety. Maybe she'd been bullied about her looks. Maybe she had body dysmorphia. But the truth, the real truth, was something nobody could have guessed, because Anna wasn't afraid of what she'd see. She was afraid of who would see her. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 10, 20, 00. The incident. April 14th, 2004. The Millbrook Valley Spring Festival. It was one of those perfect small-town events where everyone came out, kids ran around with cotton candy, and the high school band played off key renditions of classic country songs. Anna, now 16, had grown into the kind of beauty that turned heads. Long chestnut hair, clear skin, a quiet elegance that seemed out of place in a town like Millbrook. That year, the festival committee voted her Spring Queen, a largely ceremonial title that involved wearing a flower crown and waving from a parade float. Anna had tried to decline, but her mother, surprisingly, had encouraged her to accept. Maybe Margaret thought it would help Anna feel normal. Maybe she thought the attention would be good for her daughter's confidence. Whatever the reason, Anna wore the crown. She smiled for the crowds, and for a few hours, she almost looked happy. But then came the photographer, a man named Eric Brennan, a freelancer from the next town over, hired to document the festival for the local paper. He approached Anna near the end of the parade, camera in hand, and asked her to pose near the fountain in the town square. Anna nodded, her smile already fading. Eric raised the camera, the lens caught the sunlight, and in that split second, Anna saw her own face reflected in the curved glass of the lens. The scream was instant, guttural. Terrified, she collapsed to her knees, hands over her face, sobbing uncontrollably. People rushed over. Someone called for her mother. Anna kept repeating the same words over and over. "Don't let it see me. Don't let it see me." Nobody understood. Eric Brennan, shaken and confused, insisted he hadn't done anything. Margaret arrived within minutes, wrapping Anna in a blanket and guiding her toward their car. But before they left, Anna turned back toward the crowd, her face streaked with tears, and said something that chilled everyone who heard it. "He's watching. He's always watching." That night, Anna Whitlock disappeared. Margaret reported her missing at 11:47 p.m., claiming Anna had gone to bed and was gone by the time Margaret checked on her an hour later. The window in Anna's room was open, the screen was torn, and on the floor, shattered into a dozen pieces, was a small hand mirror that Margaret swore had never been in the house. 2035. 00. The investigation. Sheriff Dale McCarthy had been with the Millbrook Valley Police Department for 28 years. He'd handled domestic disputes, drug busts, the occasional bar fight, but a missing 16-year-old girl who was terrified of mirrors? That was new. The first 48 hours were a blur. Search parties combed the woods. Volunteers checked abandoned buildings. The FBI was called in, but there were no signs of a struggle outside the Whitlock home. No footprints. No blood. No evidence of forced entry. The only thing out of place was that shattered mirror. Dale interviewed Margaret multiple times. She was cooperative, but evasive. When asked why Anna was so afraid of mirrors, Margaret would only say it was a family matter, a private spiritual belief. When pressed about enemies or threats, Margaret insisted Anna had none, but the town had a different story. Rumors started surfacing almost immediately. A few people mentioned seeing a man near the Whitlock property in the weeks leading up to Anna's disappearance. A dark truck, no plates, parked at odd hours. Others recalled Anna mentioning a stalker to a friend years earlier, though the friend couldn't remember details. And then there was the photographer, Eric Brennan. He became the first suspect. His alibi checked out. He'd been at a diner with witnesses until midnight, but the scrutiny destroyed him. He left town within a month. Meanwhile, Sheriff McCarthy kept digging. He found something in Anna's bedroom that Margaret had tried to hide. A journal. Most of it was typical teenage writing, complaints about homework, sketches of trees and birds. But there were entries that stood out. March 3, 2004. I saw him again today. In the window of the hardware store. I didn't look directly, but I know it was him. He's waiting for me to remember. January 12, 2004. Mom says if I never look, he can't find me. But what if she's wrong? What if he's already found me? December 1st, 2003. I had the dream again. The one where I'm 6 years old, and there's a man standing behind me in the mirror. He's smiling, and there's blood on his hands. Sheriff McCarthy felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't a runaway case. This was something much darker. He went back to Margaret and demanded the truth, and that's when she finally broke. Sobbing, Margaret confessed that when Anna was 6 years old, something terrible had happened. But she wouldn't say what. She would only repeat, over and over, "I was trying to protect her. I was trying to keep her safe." 35-0, 45-00, the revelation. It took 2 more weeks, but Sheriff McCarthy finally found what he was looking for. In the crawl space beneath the Whitlock home, hidden behind old boxes and furniture, was a locked metal trunk. Inside were VHS tapes, dozens of them, labeled with dates from 1994. Margaret had been recording everything. McCarthy brought in a VCR and watched the tapes alone in his office. What he saw made him physically ill. The footage showed a much younger Margaret, visibly shaken, speaking directly into the camera. She explained that in July of 1994, she and 6-year-old Anna had been at a neighbor's house for a summer barbecue. The neighbor, a man named Thomas Pritchard, was a respected member of the community, a deacon at the local church, a little league coach. Everyone trusted him. That night, Margaret had stepped outside to help with the grill. Anna had wandered inside to use the bathroom, and that's when she saw it. Through the open door of Pritchard's study, reflected in a large ornate mirror on the wall, Anna saw Thomas Pritchard attacking a woman. The woman was crying, bleeding, begging him to stop. Pritchard saw Anna's reflection in that same mirror. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Anna Whitlock became a witness to a crime that Thomas Pritchard would do anything to keep hidden. Margaret found Anna minutes later, frozen in the hallway, staring at the mirror. The little girl whispered what she'd seen. Margaret, terrified and unsure who to trust in a town where Pritchard held so much power, made a choice. She took Anna home. She told her daughter never to speak of it, and she began the process of erasing every mirror from their lives, believing that if Anna never looked at her reflection again, she'd never have to remember, and Pritchard would never have a reason to come for her. But Pritchard hadn't forgotten. For 20 years, he'd been watching, waiting, making sure Anna stayed silent. The shattered mirror in Anna's room the night she disappeared, it had been placed there deliberately. A message, a reminder. Sheriff McCarthy obtained a warrant and arrested Thomas Pritchard within hours. The town was in shock. Pritchard, now in his 60s, denied everything, but when investigators searched his home, they found photographs, hundreds of them, pictures of Anna, taken from a distance over the span of years, pictures of Margaret, pictures of their house, and in his basement, they found the mirror. The same ornate mirror from 1994, now mounted on his wall like a trophy. 45-0, 55-00, the final twist. The trial lasted 3 months. Thomas Pritchard's defense argued that the photographs were circumstantial, that the mirror was just an antique he'd owned for decades, that there was no physical evidence linking him to Anna's disappearance. But then, in a moment that made national headlines, Anna Whitlock walked into that courtroom. She was 32 years old now, thin and frail, but alive. She'd been hiding in a women's shelter 3 states away, living under a different name, too terrified to come home. But when she heard about Pritchard's arrest, she knew she had to speak. Her testimony was devastating. She described that night in 1,994 inches, excruciating detail. The woman's screams, the blood, Pritchard's face in the mirror, cold and calculating. She explained how, for years, she'd catch glimpses of him in town, always watching, always reminding her that he knew where she was. The night of the spring festival, when she'd seen her reflection in the camera lens, it had triggered everything. The memories she'd spent years trying to bury came flooding back. And that night, when the mirror appeared in her room, she knew Pritchard had finally come to silence her. She'd run, climbed out the window, hitchhiked to the nearest city. And she'd been running ever since. The jury found Thomas Pritchard guilty on multiple counts, including stalking, harassment, and conspiracy. But the biggest shock came during sentencing. DNA evidence from the 1,994 crime scene, preserved in an old police file from a separate investigation, was finally processed. It confirmed that Pritchard had been involved in a violent assault, but it also revealed something else. A second person's DNA, Margaret Whitlock's. The courtroom went silent. Anna's face went pale. Prosecutors revealed that Margaret hadn't just witnessed the crime. She'd been there, complicit. Not as an attacker, but as someone who'd helped cover it up. The woman Pritchard had assaulted in 1994 had been his mistress, a woman threatening to expose their affair. Margaret, who'd been secretly involved with Pritchard years earlier, had been there that night trying to convince the woman to stay quiet. When things escalated, Margaret had frozen, done nothing. And when Anna saw it all in the mirror, Margaret made a choice: protect her daughter by hiding the truth, even if it meant living a lie for 20 years. Anna sat in that courtroom, staring at the evidence, and realized the woman who'd spent 2 decades teaching her to fear mirrors had been hiding from her own reflection too. 55-0. 60-0. Closing and engagement. Anna Whitlock lives quietly now, far from Millbrook Valley. She's never given another interview. Her mother, Margaret, passed away in 2011, 3 years before Anna finally came forward. Some say Margaret took her own life, unable to live with the guilt. Others say it was just a heart that finally gave out under the weight of too many secrets. Thomas Pritchard is serving a 30-year sentence. He'll be 92 when he's eligible for parole. The town of Millbrook Valley has tried to move on, but the story lingers. People still talk about the girl who feared mirrors. And every now and then, someone will ask the question that nobody has a good answer for. If you knew the truth about yourself, the real truth, the kind that lives buried in memory and reflection, would you have the courage to look? Or would you spend your whole life running from the glass? Think about that. Think about the things we hide, the things we bury, the reflections we refuse to face. And ask yourself, what would you see if you finally stopped running? What do you think? Was Margaret a villain or a victim? Did Anna deserve to live in fear for 20 years because of choices adults made? And what would you have done if you were 6 years old and saw something you were never supposed to see? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story shook you the way it shook me, hit that like button and share it with someone who loves a mystery that cuts deep. Because next time, I'm bringing you the case of the Silent Lake Bride, a woman who vanished in front of 12 witnesses and was found 20 years later, alive, but with no memory of where she'd been. You won't want to miss it. Until then, stay curious. And remember, some truths are hidden for a reason.